Hey, it's time for the very first throwback book review. And I thought, what better way than to not only write about it, but to talk about it. And I guess because this one's a fun one? What I'm talking about is this guy. Here in my hands is a book that's got some history and influence to it. The Prince by Niccolò Machiavelli is one of those texts that's referenced when talking about leadership. And there are some significant people in history and in the current age that have referenced this book as something that they have read and referred to multiple times. But let me get this straight right off the bat. This may not necessarily be a good thing. I read The Prince as part of a university subject back in 2017. I then published my review on it on the previous version of TaleInferno back on the 27th of July of 2017. And I'll be honest, I give it about a 2.5 out of 5. I mentioned in my October 2025 wrap-up that I wanted to go back and look at the book reviews I did on the previous TaleInferno, and because I've been listening to Midnights a bit, which is an album by Taylor Swift, I thought this would be a good book to start my throwback book reviews, noting that I most certainly won't be rereading this, but it does deserve its time in the sun. Straight off the back though, huge disclaimer, I am not a historian. Also, I note that this is a translated text. You'll see that the version of this book that I have is of the Penguin Books variety. It was published back in 2011 and was translated by George Bull. Each translation is different. Some translators rewrite the text to be about a ruler, not a prince. Some quotations will also be different based off of how a translator translates the text, which can lead to different connotations. However, the main points generally stay the same. Anyway, with that being said and done, let's get back to the throwback book review. So why did I reference Taylor Swift before? Well, if you didn't know, there's a particular lyric in her song Mastermind which refers to Machiavelli, which is, "And I swear, I'm only cryptic and Machiavellian, 'cause I care." So what does it mean to be Machiavellian? A quick type into Google and you'll get a definition along the lines of it being an adjective to mean cunning, scheming, and unscrupulous. And if you haven't guessed it yet, to be Machiavellian is inspired by the author himself, Niccolò Machiavelli, and this particular text. Now let's go back to when this was written to provide the context as to why it was written. But as I mentioned earlier in this video, and it's included in the text of the review, I'm not a historian. A lot of the context and the summary I'm about to provide you is based off of my memory back in 2017 and what I was taught then. So please excuse any inaccuracies that, and hopefully I can provide a generally maybe accurate context of this book. It was written in the 16th century to advise Lorenzo de' Medici on how to rule over his people in an attempt to get out of prison. You see, Machiavelli was a politician and a diplomat during the Renaissance, and during his time in this position, he communicated and advised a lot of officials. He was regarded to have a strong knowledge of politics and leadership. However, he wanted to align himself with who was deemed the stronger family of the time. It was the de' Medicis for a time, but then came the Borgias. But much to his mistake, the de' Medicis regained their position a few years later and Machiavelli was imprisoned and tortured. And so the Prince was born as an attempt to get back into the good books of the de' Medicis as a way to advise Lorenzo on his leadership. Now let's fast forward to today, and the Prince is still a text read by many leaders for advice, which can either be a good thing or a bad thing, depending on what advice they're taking and how they're interpreting it. It is one of the most translated texts in the world, and people still talk about it. This book is infamous for its radical ideas, and many people are torn by the advice that is given. But don't fret if you haven't heard about it. There's every chance that you have heard a quotation or are familiar with the concepts from this book, or you've listened to Mastermind by Taylor Swift and wondered what the hell does Machiavellian even mean? This isn't a fictional tale like the other books that I've reviewed so far and most of the books that I read. It's more like a pamphlet or a long essay, almost like a dissertation. Machiavelli even references examples of leadership from his time and before, as we would for our own university and college essays now. Except they didn't have the Harvard referencing system back then. All Machiavelli is really doing is writing to persuade Lorenzo that he is a valuable asset in politics and weaves in some good old flattery while he's at it. But here's the kicker. I'm pretty sure Lorenzo de' Medici didn't even read it. So make of that what you will. In The Prince, there are 26 sections, or chapters, that cover different aspects of leadership. The first 11 are about the different kinds of principalities and what Machiavelli thinks of them. Sections 12 to 14 focus on the military and warfare, and how a prince needs to be educated in the different kinds of militia. The rest of the book focuses on the qualities a prince should have, how they should act, and what to look out for. And while this book is intended to advise a prince, and was written hundreds of years ago, there are leaders today who read this text and have been able to make advice relevant for the modern times. We also see concepts from this text adapted for modern storytelling, such as film and music. I'll highlight 2 examples of this. So one leadership context that is covered by The Prince by Niccolò Machiavelli is when attempting to lead, making others powerful will destroy you. So this comes from a few quotations, including, men must either be pampered or crushed, because they can get revenge for small injuries, but not for grievous ones. And whoever is responsible for another's becoming powerful ruins himself. While I'm sure you get the gist from those 2 quotations, what Machiavelli is stating is that when it comes to leadership, the leaders who came before and their associates should be cut from their positions as to not to regain their power. And a leader needs to be careful in the power they give to others. The second example of a leadership concept as outlined in Machiavelli's text is it is better to be feared than loved. This is a very well-known concept that has been included and adapted into a lot of forms of storytelling, and is usually something the villain of said story would say or emulate. One of the quotations for this in this book is, "It is far better to be feared than loved if you cannot be both." Machiavelli states that a person is far less likely to turn their back on you in fear of punishment than if they love you, and that a prince can control fear, but not love. Therefore, a prince should only rely on what he can control. So yeah, 2 very polarizing and kind of manipulative types of concepts for a book about leadership. I don't know about you, but for me, I look at these things as examples of what not to do. But hey, I never claimed to be a leader, or a very good one at that. However, I'm not sure we would say the same for those who take these 2 particular learnings as good leaders either. Whoa, hey there. Different clothing, different time. I'm editing this video right now, and I just wanted to quickly jump in and give some clarity to what I was just trying to say. Because I don't think I was very clear in the video then. So pretty much what I was trying to say was that those 2 leadership concepts, as outlined by Machiavelli, I don't think are good quality leadership skills. That's just on me. I don't think leaders should try to be feared rather than loved and those types of things. So anyway, I just wanted to make that clear that what I was trying to say in the video was I don't think that those 2 leadership concepts should be how people determine what a good leader is. So anyway, that's all I had to say. Back to the video. Other concepts that are included in this text include being able to judge a prince by who they surround themselves with, the dangers of having enemies within your walls, and that a prince should recognize that they won't please everyone. So with all that being said and done, what did I like? Look, I read this book many years ago, and I can still remember the struggle I had reading through this. However, there were some things I didn't mind, and things that come to mind when I ask myself this question all these years later. I think it's cool to see some of the concepts in this book and identify that they have been adapted or weaved into other stories. However, I also note that a lot of those concepts are portrayed by the villains or antagonists of those stories, and that says a lot about said concepts. With that in mind, there are some concepts that are covered in this book that aren't super manipulative or unscrupulous that I didn't mind, and you could consider them from a leadership perspective. Some of these concepts were ones like being able to control one's destiny if you have the right means, attitude, and people surrounding you, and the importance of surrounding oneself with people who add to your life rather than bringing you down. I did also like the contradiction, which is Machiavelli flattering Lorenzo at the beginning of the text, and then later writes about the folly of listening to flatterers. And on a side note, and not related to the text at all, but I also really like that Machiavelli is a character in the Assassin's Creed video game series. I remember jumping on that game and doing the Leonardo DiCaprio pointing finger meme when Machiavelli appeared. I'll eventually get around to doing a story analysis playthrough of that game series, and we can meet the man himself. But what didn't I like? Well, more than what I did like. As you can expect, from something that is written like an essay, it's written in very formal language, and there is just so much information and so many pages where there's limited paragraph breaks and it hurts my eyeballs to look at it. It's also not the type of book that I would usually read for pleasure, to be honest. And there's only so much I can read about leadership, which is clearly corrupt, tyrannical, and all of those types of lovely words without rolling my eyes and shaking my head. It's a tough one to read, and I wouldn't read it again. Hence the throwback review. While I've still got the book, my eyes are not going to be rereading its pages again. I also don't endorse the messages and learnings in this book. I think there are far better modern day texts on leadership which we can use to support our leadership journeys. Anyway, to wrap up this first throwback book review, The Prince by Niccolò Machiavelli still continues to be infamous for its radical ideas and is the influence for many leaders and storytelling adaptations. However, it's not for me. So what are your thoughts on this one? Are there pieces of advice or concepts in this book that you think are actually positive for leadership? What concepts have stuck with you since reading this text and coming across references of it? What other stories have you seen that take inspiration from the concepts in this book? I'd really love to hear about it in the comments. So go ahead and leave a comment and let me know. If you enjoyed watching this video and want to keep up with any future throwback book reviews or other book reviews and blogs that I do, make sure to keep an eye on the TaleInferno website at www.taleinferno.com. Follow TaleInferno on social media and subscribe to the TaleInferno YouTube channel. Ring the bell and like the video. All those good things. Again, thank you for watching. I look forward to continue igniting the story with you. Bye!